burst through the Earth's crust to become a sapling. Because nature would have it that you don't become a sapling, and a lot of seeds don't become a sapling. Darwinism would have you say, look, you don't deserve to survive. I was on WhatsApp as the support guy for all our CIOs. By the time I left, we had done more than $7 billion of software business. We're doing 1.6 billion plus in annual software business. Software is imperfect, and people are imperfect, and the processes are imperfect. When you try to bring all these imperfect things together, you actually create something that is way closer to being perfect.
Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Pitch Cafe podcast. We are here today with one of the movers and shakers in Silicon Valley. If you think immigrants cannot make it big in the United States, people like our guest today has changed that notion. We are here today with Dheeraj Pandey, who put India on the world map with his massive success of Nutanix. Cloud used to be a notion, it became a commodity because of people like Dheeraj Pandey. He has a bachelor's degree from IIT Kanpur and also a PhD candidate from UT Austin, master's computer science from UT Austin. Well, those things don't matter to me because when I hear him talk, I just forget the world. The depth and the wit with which he can read a concept, he can visualize the future. Only a trendsetter, people who make the future are like this. And today I have the huge privilege of being seated next to him to talk about something which he holds very dear to his heart, and it's vulnerability in leadership, the paradoxes of entrepreneurship. You think entrepreneurs are like on a high horse and they are beating challenges? No, they're not. They are vulnerable and they're open to empathy. They are soft. They look okay being beaten up. And this is what we're going to talk about. This is the element missing from the entrepreneurial landscape today. Does passion meet profit? Does compassion meet profit? Let's talk about this. Dheeraj, welcome to Pitch Cafe podcast.
Well, thank you.
Truly an honor to have you here. And, you've been there, done that. You've seen the highs and lows. Why do you embrace vulnerability? Why do you think leadership is important in vulnerability? And why do you call it a paradox? You've held a horses for so long. Nutanix went public. You've raised like over $1 billion with Nutanix. Why do you talk about vulnerability? It's like the softest, it's like the most, intangible thing. But you want to talk about it. So let's get started. Why do you talk about vulnerability?
First of all, it's an honor to be on the podcast as well. So thank you, Vida, for this. At the end of it all, business is about doing business with people.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that there's an element of humanism that drives the best businesses out there. I mean, if you go back to Microsoft of the 2000s, it was still a great company, but they missed out on a lot. And those 13, 14 years before Satya took over.
Yeah.
And the missing piece was humanism. There was a lot of zero-sum mentality at Microsoft before that. If Microsoft, then not Apple. If Apple, then not Microsoft. I mean, it was, and there was so many trends that Microsoft missed. Mobile trends and social trends, the cloud trend, the open source thing. There was a lot of zero-sum thinking going on. And here comes this big change that Satya brings. I mean, there's a really good article that The Economist wrote. I think it was a cover page article about what's the real strategy that Microsoft is going to bring. And pardon my French, but he basically says, fuck Windows is the strategy. So it's really for the thing that they had come to embrace for 30 years, the whole livelihood, the whole purpose of Microsoft was Windows and everything built on top of Windows being the only way they could survive and thrive. Here comes Satya and says, look, we've got to do we want to build things that people like. And to me, and this was the 2014, 2015 sort of evolution of Microsoft, which really redefined everything. Today, when you look at why people love Microsoft, this company redefined from when they used to hate Microsoft.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
because of vulnerability. And it stuck with me, for the longest time, that if you just bring in an element of humanism, even the biggest of customers, they relate to you better.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what drove a big part of Nutanix's success. I was on WhatsApp as the support guy for all our CIOs, and we were doing big business. I mean, by the time I left, we had done more than $7 billion of software business. We're doing 1.6 billion plus in annual software business, and yet I was that accessible, and customer support was at the core of a lot of our strategy, because software is imperfect, and
Yeah.
people are imperfect, and the processes are imperfect. When you try to bring all these imperfect things together,
Yeah.
you actually create something that is way closer to being perfect. And the humanism in customer support that we brought at Nutanix, how we had the subservience to the customer, um, actually drove a lot of the success of the company. So I look at vulnerability as one of the core ingredients of leadership. Um, if anything, I mean, I'm a big fan of both Brené Brown and Mike Robbins.
Mhm.
I look at them as my distant mentors. I mean, I've interacted with Brené. I've contributed to one of her books called Dare to Lead. But I've also learned a lot from Mike Robbins,
Mhm.
who talks about vulnerability, authenticity being a framework.
Mhm.
Like the left of the spectrum is dishonest people, and the middle of the spectrum are honest people. And that gives you a pause, because what he's trying to convey is that honesty is not good enough.
Yeah.
And he's been brilliant in talking about what you need to take out of honesty and add to honesty to make it authentic. And it's like going from the journey of good to great.
Yeah.
It's an infinite journey. You can never be perfectly great, but how do you really inch from being good to getting better and better and better every day? That's the same journey of going from honest to authentic,
So tell me, what's the subtle difference?
between honesty and authentic.
Yeah.
And I think this is what he says: you got to remove self-righteousness, which is this idea that just because I'm right, you must be wrong.
Mm.
It's the zero sum mindset that a lot of leadership suffers from. And then what you got to add to it is vulnerability, which is this idea that I could be wrong. The first one is, just because I'm right, you must be wrong. And the second idea is, I could be wrong. So how do you take out self-righteousness every day in your dealings? I deal with it every day.
This seems like the core philosophy of the East, where you say ego does not exist. I belong to the universe. I'm a part of everything that's around me, and I vanish. So something like that. But you're talking about, this is a corporate setup here. So
Yeah, and in many ways, I think East and West are mingling now in a completely globalized world, and so I don't look at it as East versus West. I look at what are the elements of capitalism and what are the elements of humanism that you need to balance. I mean,
right.
In my last company, Nutanix, we had a really good principle that we kind of borrowed from Amazon's principles. It was get comfortable being uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like opposites. Like, how do you get to become comfortable at things that you're not good at?
Right.
And in there, we actually defined what this principle was. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. So we talked a lot about ambiguity. Like, what does it mean to be comfortable with ambiguity? Because a lot of leadership and entrepreneurship is about walking in the fog.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And not expecting the sun to shine right now and the fog to clear. So how do you keep walking? Because the more you walk, the more visibility you get.
Just hold that thought there. I want to delve deeper into Brené Brown's book, Dare to Lead, where you've contributed a chapter on paradoxes in entrepreneurship. Sounds like you're talking about optimism versus paranoia here. For me, that is the hardest part of being on my own. I don't work for anyone. I work for myself. Every day in the morning, I wake up with this paranoia, but I also enjoy, I'm enjoying this conversation with you. I have this freedom. So tell me, you say it's vulnerability helps you balance this tightrope between optimism and paranoia. So can you explain how you did it or how you do it every day?
Yeah, it's not easy, by the way.
It's not.
Because one of the things that I also talk about a lot is creatives and creators. I mean, you're a creative. We all try to create as part of this entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah.
We are monomaniacally focused, and we have to bring in this immense amount of energy and focus to create something out of nothing. And to take an idea to reality, a concept or an idea to reality. It is not really comfortable for the folks around you.
Yeah.
Because it's like the seed that's trying to burst through the earth's crust to become a sapling.
Yeah.
Because nature would have it that you don't become a sapling, and a lot of seeds don't become a sapling. So how many of these ideas, they don't become, they don't go from idea to concept to even a prototype. Forget about being a product or a business or a company. I think there's a lot that goes on in the middle where Darwinism would have you say, look, you don't deserve to survive. And for creatives and creators, this monomaniacal focus, it sucks a lot of the energy and it makes people around them uncomfortable. So I struggle with it. I struggle with it every day. I think about it every day because there's this quest to really charm the end user and delight the end user who's really outside your company. And then at the same time, you have to make sure that you build these long-term builders within the company,
right,
who have to basically strive every day to wage this war for this underserved user.
Right.
And then it creates friction on the inside. It's like, what does it mean to really take the friction out for the end user? And in the process, you create some friction on the inside. I think that's the thing that I grapple with every day.
I see a very clear yin yang here, like the feminine and the masculine. The feminine is very creative, very happy, and very very much in the flow, and the masculine is putting structure, keeping accounts on everything. So this is like that dance you're trying to do with vulnerability. Now, I see that you're vulnerable enough to say that you struggle with optimism and paranoia every day. You admitted that. So you're living what you just said. So let's talk about letting the chaos reign versus reigning in the chaos. This is like the most amazing part of entrepreneurship, crossing the chasm. When you are in chaos, you're building something, you're making mistakes, you're iterating, and then once you're scaling, the founder mindset needs to be set aside. It's the person who scales. He's talking more about unit metrics and things like that. So how did you balance that? You're one person, you are the founder, you are the person who dreamt it, and now you're the person who's supposed to look at the accounts, the metrics, the scale. How was that transition? Did you have to have two people in one, or how does that work?
Well, it is true. I mean, there's a little bit of a schizophrenic in all creators.
Right.
They're just people who are opposites of each other, who are within themselves. And
you're a founder CEO for a long time. It's very rare. The other person I see now is Jensen Huang. He's the founder CEO. It's like, what is it like to be that person? The same person, but you have to wear so many hats.
Yeah, at least the two sides, as you said. Letting chaos reign is important so that you don't kill good ideas. Because a lot of really good ideas actually come from the grassroots.
Yeah.
But not all ideas ever become a concept. Forget about being a prototype and being a feature or a product or a company or a business. So you really need to know how to let these saplings come up, and eventually some of them you have to nurture and protect and get to understand what defines success for them and give them more resources, more water, more sunshine. All that stuff that happens in nature equally needs to happen in a business as well, which is where you need to rein in the chaos. And by the way, this is the rein without the G, and the first one was rein with a G.
With the G, okay.
Right?
This reigning.
Let chaos reign and reign in the chaos.
Right.
I'm a big fan of the book Only the Paranoid Survive, Andy Grove's book.
Yeah.
And he has these two chapters, in his book, and they're right after one after the other. Let chaos reign, and reign in the chaos. So imagine even in the 80s and the 90s, and they were a very vulnerable company because of the Japanese manufacturing superiority to the American memory business. In the memory business, they were crushed, and by 1985, Intel was a nobody.
Right.
And how they got out of it and really got into the microprocessor business. They were vulnerable enough to say, look, we'll get out of this business. And having him write these two chapters really has been etched in my memory as well. So as I think about our grassroots people's ideas, and it happens every day. And then how do you go curate a few of them that you feel, could become not just a plant, but a tree, and one of them could become a sequoia. I mean, this happened in my last company too, where we were almost cornered by a large competitor and a partner. It's a frenemy in VMware. I mean, just think of the idea of a frenemy is a paradox.
Yeah.
Friend and an enemy. What does it even mean?
Yeah.
But in corporate world, you see this all the time. All the time. I mean, Apple and Google were frenemies to each other.
Yeah.
Even till today,
they are
biggest frenemies. But back in the day, I mean, if you go back to App Store, when there were no takers, Apple built the YouTube app for Google, and just gave it away or something, and then obviously they were codependent on each other for maps and location and all this stuff. And so I think for us, being a frenemy with our largest competitor and a partner was one of those defining moments. But the idea actually came from grassroots folks who are developers, who are passionate, to take control of their own destiny, of our own destiny. And all the product managers in our company, they said, why are we doing this? Which is really going after a new market of compute virtualization when we were basically just a
they said that? Oh
storage
my God.
virtualization company. And then look, I think at some level, a lot of the product managers, they were paid to listen to the customer. But sometimes you got to listen to the grassroots from the inside.
Right.
And this is again a paradox, because if you just go by what customers are asking for, you'll keep trying to create faster horses.
Yeah.
Right? As opposed to a car.
Yeah.
And I think that's another classical paradox in entrepreneurship that one has to grapple with on an everyday basis.
Valley is so focused on customers, and I know that DevRev is trying to disrupt in this space. You want to be customer focused, but if you look at the East, if you look at the Asian market, they are not fully focused on customers. They also they look at the inside. So is this like a wave? Do you think this is a wave that Amazon is very big on customer focused efforts, but how do they treat their employees? Now, is this a wave? Is this going to go back and forth? Do you think this is going to stay? Customer centricity or customer success, do you think this is the wave, or is this here to stay? What do you think?
I think it always has. Honestly, even 100 years ago, it was like this. I don't think it has changed from ever since the Industrial Revolution. Even before that, I would go back to the Silk Trade, and I mean the fact that companies did well because they focused on customers has been there probably since time immemorial. Now that doesn't mean that everything they say is right.
Yeah.
Because again, many of them, they're focused on tactically doing what's good for them in the next, near to midterm horizon. And sometimes you got to really balance with longer term thinking,
right,
which might only come from the creators within. And once you have built something to a large extent, and it's visual and it's palpable and one can touch and feel it, then you take it to a customer and they're like, oh wow, it's in the art of possible that otherwise they would not have been able to visualize. So many a time you have to keep it in your back pocket, not try to just go talk in the abstract with the customer. If you built it long enough to a point 8 version, now the customer becomes important, because then they get to visualize, because not every customer is a visual thinker.
They're not.
Right? But if you show them the visuals, which is why mock-ups become so important, design becomes so important. I feel like customer centricity and product centricity,
Product
which is
centricity,
your own way of thinking about the product, they're yin and yang of each other. And this is why the end users' feedback, but also the developers and the product managers and the designers' feedback actually are a negotiating thing. You got to negotiate both sides of this. And many a time the end user wins, but many a time the creator wins as well. So
Yeah.
I don't look at this as a zero-sum game. It's
Yeah.
really in the infinite sense of it. I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek as well.
The infinite game, right? Yeah.
I feel like you got to really get this paradox between the end user and the creator to coexist.
Fantastic. That's such an amazing idea. Only somebody who has reigned, the reign with R-E-I-G-N, and the R-E-I-N can come up with this balance. Well, there is another thing I always struggle with: velocity and quality, because Valley is all about velocity. And now we just talked about customer centricity, and we talked about product centricity. How they work together. Velocity comes from customer centricity, or does it not?
I think it comes from creators, so it's more inside out. Every creator wants to be getting good feedback, fast feedback, because they are also looking for dopamine. Creators, developers, product managers, designers, they're constantly looking for closure, so they want velocity. While the end user is saying, well, give me quality as well, because I don't want to be a tester.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a guinea pig. I don't want to be the one that you experiment on, because my time is equally important. And of course, those who are really good at this, they try to balance the two. Velocity.
Yeah, velocity also would be scale of growth. Like, I want to scale my company faster. I want higher valuations. Have you thought in that direction as well?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, look, I look back at my Nutanix journey, and we were the fastest to $1 billion in that last decade. But in terms of quality, we probably didn't think through everything, which really came in as an afterthought. Sales compensation, how do you really deal with the business model? What do you pay for? What do you not pay for? Who do you pay for what? Like, the whole idea of Nutanix's business model transition was about hunting versus farming.
Yeah.
You pay a certain sales commission for hunting new deals and new dollars and net new revenue, versus customer success and farming and what you could actually do with customer success as part of the second, third, fourth, fifth year of contract value. Well, the core of that whole transition, and that is quality. Like, now you're thinking hard about the shareholder, and the efficiency of a business, which to me came in 2016. I started looking at the business and like, oh, whatever I've built is fast. It's been high velocity, but now I got to go focus the next 5 years on really making it high quality. I mean, we had a great high quality product.
Yeah.
But I didn't build a high quality business to begin with. It was a high velocity business. And maybe it is because the time that we actually were growing was a low interest rate time. The era was a low interest rate era. So it was all about growth at all costs.
Yeah.
But I think
the entrepreneurial landscape has changed. I think people like you, when you talk about vulnerability, you're a role model to I don't know how many youth, especially in India. You have a huge following. I'm sure they're going to embrace that. They're going to give it a serious thought, and they'd say, I want to be a leader who shows their vulnerability. So I think times have changed. And my question there, I want to shift gears. You talk about, you talked about sales-led thinking, hunting over farming. That is sales-led thinking. You're pumping money into sales. Now, things have moved to product-led growth ever since, after Nutanix, after the decade. Now, I'm thinking, is it going to move to developer-led? Is it going to move there? Because your tools are for developers, and you're talking wholly about customer success. Do you think you're moving to the core of the whole issue? And you're not.
Yeah, I'm going to use a different word. I mean, I like the way you put developer maker-led growth.
Maker-led, that's the word.
But the real word is experience.
Experience-led, I like that.
And I mean, I've always been about experience. I love the fact that Adobe I sit on the board at Adobe, and we
Yeah.
really embrace experience-led growth. And I love the fact that it's XLG. It's
Mhm.
not PLG, it's not SLG, it's XLG. But it comes down to the whole thesis of DevRev was about really, bringing the creators and the users together on the same platform. And
Mhm.
along the way, you actually build a more efficient
Yeah.
business. That was my thinking, that look, I could now go and just sit on boards and provide people with abstract ideas and advice. But what if I took a lot of the lessons of Nutanix?
Right.
Well, look, we were spending $1 billion on sales and marketing every year.
Yeah.
Every year, $1
Yeah.
billion.
Yeah.
Spending another $400 million on R&D.
Yeah.
And I feel like to take a lot of the lessons and really build a more cohesive business,
Yeah.
where the departments would still talk to each other efficiently, going back to your thing about experience, I feel like the experience within also matters as much as the experience without, which is to the outside user.
Yeah.
And that is what should it be all about, experience-led growth. And
Yeah.
and the experience now also includes the shareholder, because for the longest time, I always thought that the shareholder was actually an afterthought.
Yeah.
Like they're not a customer.
Mhm.
But then when we went public, I started to realize that they're also a customer.
Yeah.
And by the way, the employee was a customer. I mean, I
Yeah.
never looked at employees any differently. So how do you
That's
balance
an amazing thought. Can you expand on that? Why do you call employee
a customer? Well, I mean, look, in the world of tech, we don't have factories. We don't have assets like capital assets. These days, we don't even have buildings anymore, because
Yeah.
of remote work.
Yeah.
So what do we have? It's human capital.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, all work gets done through their creativity.
Yeah.
So you got to really elevate and up level and respect your employees, because if they leave and if they have attrition and you have churn in that part of the world, then the end users suffer.
Yeah.
And therefore the end user, and in our case we use the word dev and rev very, very cleverly. Dev is our internal employees, and
Mm.
rev is the customers that they serve.
Oh wow.
And this is true for our customers too. So we look at our customers' employees as dev, and we look at their customers as rev. So how do you really go have this double empathy, not just for the dev, but also for the rev, has been at the core of our philosophy or thinking. And if you don't get the dev right,
Yeah.
the rev would suffer. So we've personified not just the customers, but their customers as well.
So it seems to be a self-referential here, like
Absolutely.
a fractal or something.
No, you're right. Yeah, I think you nailed it. At some level, there's a level of recursion
Recursion, exactly.
in
That's
this. It's like inception.
yeah.
And when we do this internal architecture meetings, we are very conscious about. And by the way, Salesforce did a great job with this. To really think about not just customers, but customers.
Yes.
And other companies like ServiceNow, they kind of struggle because they never built it for customers.
Yeah.
And everything from AI and analytics to the way you think about APIs, they all are a struggle if you try to retrofit customers later on as an afterthought.
Yeah.
So I think for us, thinking about dev as a customer as well, including our own employees as customers, was a very important piece of this culture puzzle as well. I mean, you can build culture if your internal employees are not happy.
Yeah, it's an amazing thought. Or ask you about something else. That's okay. We'll come to it. Now let's get back to how you build products. I'm a big fan of your design choices. And, I saw your YouTube channel. Everything from the logo, from the way you do your marketing, I'm just blown away. So let's talk about simplicity and choice. How do you nail that paradox? How do you? Obviously, everything you do, you prefer simplicity. It's in your nature. You're grounded. But even in the choices you make, you're simple. Does that mean it's a lot of work to be simple? Or?
It is. I mean, honestly, this happens to a lot of companies. It happened to Salesforce. It happened to Atlassian. It's probably happened to AWS now. Initially you're focused on a simpler customer. So a lot of your things are simpler. They're simple.
Yeah.
But
Like,
over time, you start trying to go after the enterprise.
yeah.
And now you have a complex customer.
Yeah.
With complex organizational setup, complex security policies.
Yeah.
They're just a more complex sort of concept, abstraction, entity to deal with. So a lot of your products actually become more complicated.
Complex. It's not like what you envisioned it. It's a
Yeah.
whole different animal, right?
Yeah. And this is where I believe AI will play a big role and could play a big role if you used it right. Because the idea of pruning products or the idea of knowing what features are even being used and not being used and how do you really go personalize and customize based on a customer's preferences, because you start to gather a lot of unused products and features, and nobody cares about pruning it.
Yeah.
So I think the human reinforcement, the idea of feedback, the idea of gathering every click and knowing how to really simplify again.
Yeah.
Because you did added a lot of complexity along the way, because you went from a simple single user to a prosumer, going from consumer to a prosumer, which is a professional consumer, to now getting to a team of people where there's shared assets, to going to an enterprise setup, going from there to a large enterprise setup. You've basically added a ton of features, a ton of bells and whistles. You've added middlemen like administrators along the way and really start to configure the product. You have a lot of choice. So you go from simple to a lot of choice. And I feel that people who were lovers of Salesforce, started to hate Salesforce.
Yeah.
They used to love Atlassian, they started to hate Atlassian. And I'm seeing a little bit of that in the public cloud as well. It started very simple for a singleton user to now really making it for the large enterprise where you have lots of IT administrators and the end users are now one hop away. I think it will come down to design choices one more time, but design will need feedback from machines to say what is being used, how do you need to prune the product, how do you need to get rid of things that nobody uses. It's shelfware now. I think that will become a very important piece of this simplicity versus choice.
So, I was excited by the fact that you mentioned AI, and I can't stop myself from asking you about Gen AI. And we had this whole chat GPT thing come and shake us. Building up on your last question, you were talking about moving from simplicity to complexity. Do you think AI will keep it simple or make it simple because AI is going to do the thinking for you, the kind of struggles, and is that what DevRev is aiming to do? In the pipeline between the customer and the development. Do you think that's what you're doing? Is that how you can explain it?
Yeah. So let me explain DevRev. I'll take a step back and talk about what are we really building. So there's lots of departments in a company, and they all do their own little thing. Developers build software, and they call their work issues. Let's use a simple term like issues. This is something that GitHub and others have actually made very popular. The idea of issues is kind of unit of work. Cloud ops people go and operate a cloud, they call them incidents. So that's a unit of work. Support people, they go support customers and they call it tickets. And then, of course, sales and marketing people, they go do their own work, opportunities, which is like a unit of work. Like, hey, I'm dealing with a prospect and I have an opportunity to track my work. Or marketing people call it campaigns. So everybody's busy working. You have developers doing software development and engineering, they call it issues, and you have cloud ops people doing incidents, and support people dealing with tickets, and sales and marketing or growth people dealing with opportunities and campaigns. Everybody's working hard, but nobody knows for who. The end user is completely absent in this.
Yeah.
CRMs were built with buyers in mind, and sellers and buyers are interacting. There's some level of relationship management, but the end user is completely forgotten, and the product is completely absent from this. Because what you all are coming to build as a company is a product.
Yeah.
And the true north of this product is the end user. So this has been completely absent.
Such a hard problem you're after. It's a really hard problem.
So, but it actually is a solution right there. The product is what unifies all these departments together. And the end user is the underserved user is what you really are really aiming for. So we changed the entire game of CRM. We said, look, let's stop talking about sales CRM and support CRM and marketing CRM.
Yeah.
Of course, there's no product CRM. We have to talk about a product system of record for product managers to feel like they have a way of really conceptualizing and concretizing their real job, which is product management. So there's sales CRM, there's support CRM, there's marketing CRM, there's a product CRM. We've brought it all together into this umbrella called one CRM. It's not only sales, it's not only support, it's not only marketing, it's not only product, it's one CRM. So that's the platform. So in many ways, we effectively brought support operations, product operations, engineering operations, and sales operations, all of that data into one place. And now we are saying, let's go build the world's best co-pilots, co-pilots, AI co-pilots for support people, for product managers, for developers, for customer success people. And let's give them the world's best analytics. What does it mean to truly give them time travel? The idea that they can go back in time and look at customers as of a certain date, or product features as of a certain date, or people as of a certain date, because people have roles and responsibilities, but what were they doing 6 months ago? Or how were the product features quality or usage or latency as of 3 weeks ago? Or what were the customers' temperature as of 2 months ago? I think between Copilot and analytics, we'll cover a lot of ground with one CRM. And along the way, I think we're going to disrupt some big incumbents who have been very siloed in their departmental thinking. These companies that were born out like Atlassian, all we do is build software, help build software. But then there's no connection to the product, there's no connection to the end user.
That's a huge market you're after. And I like the fact that you talked about time travel with AI kicking in, and you're going to have a lot of nudger, a system that can nudge people. Now, my question was, who is in charge of the North Star here? Who's going to tell what is the North Star for the organization?
So if I were to interpret your question about who's the buyer, who should actually go buy DevRev, I think we've started with customer support. We said, look, at the end of the day, one of the killer apps of AI here will be in customer support. The idea of a chatbot that is always awake and up and running and is sentient and can deflect a lot of questions. It's like the Slack-like thinking that has emerged on support side between the end user and customer support of the front office becomes very important. Customer support itself is going to go through a lot of churn and transition and transformation. And I'm calling it elevation, because L1, L2 support will actually need a lot of deflection so that they don't need to wake up at wee hours of the night to actually answer questions. L3, which is technical support, can do without a developer being awake, with them, or a product manager being with them. So you need to build a co-pilot for L1, L2, and L3. Well, you also need a co-pilot for a product manager so that they can actually go and do things without having a customer success manager or a support person or a tech lead or a dev manager being in the same room with them. And of course, customer success people need a co-pilot so that they don't need a PM to be there everywhere.
This is truly amazing. So you're saying like a system can act like a CEO?
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, there will be a co-pilot for a CEO as well. I mean, we feel like...
No, honestly, there are, a few nations in the Nordic, they have an AI judge. Like the judge it's an AI. And the other day, IIT Madras had this panel on Gen AI, and there was this investor who said, humans are biased. How can they build unbiased systems? A system should be building an unbiased system. Essentially, this is the work of a system, not a human. So
I think I would actually push back on that, because there's the way neural networks are thinking is also based on data.
Yes, you're right.
And that data is biased. So there's a lot of biases there's weights and biases in a neural network, and That's just the definition of the data structure is weights and biases.
Yeah, also it's based on the greedy. It's greedy for rewards. And that's a very
Yeah.
bad system. It doesn't understand empathy. So
And by the way, there's a huge paradox built into AI as well. I feel like humanism and machine learning or artificial intelligence and humanism need to coexist.
and can you elaborate a little bit on that? I would say elaborate on design and AI. How can they work together in a corporate setup?
Well, I mean, one of the big pieces of the AI puzzle is RLHF. It's called reinforcement learning with human feedback. And
Right.
right there, there's the word human in RLHF. The H stands for human, which means that machines are desperate for human feedback, because then they will be a little bit smarter tomorrow. Because, once you have the feedback of yay or meh or nay, I think, there's these little acts of feedback from a human will go a long way in making the models a little better tomorrow, and a little better day after tomorrow, and so on and so forth. Design also plays a big role in this because, there was a recent research like 3 years ago about chatbots. And just like humans who try to act the smartest in the room and the rest of the social setup actually starts to ignore them and call them an outcast or whatever, equally true, arrogant bots have been voted out by humans as opposed to humble bots.
Oh my god.
So,
oh my god.
and
You're
it's
talking about coexisting
personas.
with machines here.
Yeah, personas. I mean, the persona of a bot will go a long way in whether humans will try to make it successful or not. And design will play a big role in it. I mean, the way the recommendation engine works, the way the feedback needs to come, the way you include wit or humor, and self-deprecation will play a big role in whether bots succeed or fail.
So, according to you, design is decision. But designing something means making a lot of decisions on behalf of that system. So you're saying that human decisions there should be an element of human decision making with the machine decision making.
Yeah, or I think the human feedback where you are making, and I use the word co-pilot very deftly, and I'm not saying who's the co-pilot.
Right.
Think about it. A lot of flying, if you look at commercial flying, there's an autopilot. Now, what happens to business and business processes over time? Time will tell. We'll probably start to elevate what business needs to really deliver on a day-to-day basis. But autopilots are now pretty common in commercial flying. I would prefer to use the word co-pilot because then you're not saying whether the human is a co-pilot or the machine is a or AI is a co-pilot. You just have to use it interchangeably. Actually, to build a more efficient business now than last decade, because of just the way the interest rates are, I actually even challenge our employees within to say, look, I know you're going to look for yet another assist, like a rep looking for an SE looking for a PM looking for a program manager, a product manager looking for a program manager, and so on and so forth. How about we ask for AI co-pilots? Because all of a sudden you will build more efficient businesses. So whatever in the last 40, 50 years of tech, or even in 100 years of the industrial revolution, we've kept asking for more people, more headcount. I think we'll have to figure out how to ask for more AI co-pilot headcount. And it's a journey, not a destination. But the more we can think about AI co-pilots in everything we do as we grow our businesses, the more efficient we'll be.
Okay. On that note, there is this law. It's called Moravic's paradox. It says that you need a lot more computational resources for sensory motor tasks as compared to cognitive skills. Now, that is those are the kind of paradoxes in the world of AI. Now you're talking about entrepreneurship here, and you're sitting at the height of technology innovation here in the valley. Tell me, what do you think with AI kicking in? Where is the next disruption going to come with the way the compute is being used? More for sensory motor skills versus cognition. And you're talking about people could easily be replaced by co-pilots. Where do you think the next technology disruption is going to come? Where is the puck going to be going to?
Well, I would refrain from saying that people will be replaced. I think
there won't be, but
I think we
new
have
kinds
to,
of jobs.
people will have to evolve.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go back in time to the internet, 1994 happened.
Yeah.
Now we started to think like e-commerce is going to take over.
Right.
Before COVID in 2019, only 9% of US commerce was e-commerce.
Wow.
After COVID, it changed to 14%.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's probably 15, 16% is e-commerce. But that just goes on to tell you that more than 80% of commerce, I mean, out of the 5 trillion that we spend in US retail, only 10 to 15% is online. So it's a long journey to basically saying everything gets done digitally, because a lot of it is about trust.
Yeah.
I think people still want to go touch and feel things, especially
Right.
when it's big things.
Yeah.
And you could say the same thing about ideas. When there's a big idea, it requires cognition.
Yeah.
It will require human thinking. With a lot more synthesis and analysis that'll get done. But the little things like buying toilet paper or whatever else, I could actually do using, Amazon.com and so on. So I think there's going to be a similar dichotomy here. The little workflows, the little tasks will need to start getting done. And it goes beyond automation. I think, this has to go to sequence of automations, and we'll call that AI in some sense. Obviously, there's a bunch of decision making that will happen along the way. But the big things, the big ideas, which just cannot be done on pattern matching, will need to be requiring a lot of human skills and white collar skills and so on that needs to get done.
Yeah, one of the things, how will B2B sales happen virtually? This was the question on every startup founder's mind when COVID hit. The founders who were just raising seed or Series A, this was a big question on their mind when COVID started. So I agree with you on that.
There's one more paradox that actually, I was reading the McKinsey article from 5-6 years ago about how robotic automation flattered to deceive. And the big reason, everybody thought 20 years ago that all factories will be completely robotized, there'll be robots everywhere and so on. The problem was change management. You couldn't refresh the software and even the hardware fast enough.
Yeah.
Humans were faster to reskill themselves.
Yes.
And it was easier to repurpose them than machines. So I think we're going to see a lot of this yin and yang between who is going to be faster to reskill.
Yeah.
Whether it's going to be the AI model or the human. And I think
that's a good problem to have.
Yeah, and I think there'll be an element of Darwinism in this as well. There'll be people will be faster to evolve.
Oh my God. Yeah, I mean,
than the machine.
I don't want to push that question. Darwinism between human and machine. I just want to leave it there. We'll cross the bridge when we get there. So, this has been an amazing, amazing conversation. So, Dheeraj, I want to keep talking about all the paradoxes. There's one on short-term and long-term thinking and marathon and sprints versus marathon of sprints. Do you want to, talk about this quickly before I move on to the last piece?
Well, I mean, as somebody said, most people don't disagree on the ideas, they disagree on horizons.
Yeah. And
short-term and long-term is basically the piece that really brings a lot of politics into company, because most ideas are not bad ideas. It's a question of there are managers who are more paranoid about the short term.
Right.
And then there are managers who are more paranoid about the long term.
Right.
Like what's around the corner.
Yeah.
That's where a lot of conflicts happen. I think my biggest dealing in my last company, we'd grown to 6,000-7,000 people.
Gosh.
And a lot of folks, they had conflicts because of not the idea itself, but the horizon.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that there's a right or wrong answer in short term versus long term. As long as you're aware of it, you normalize the conflict that, look, we are not disagreeing on each other. There's no ad hominem attacks on human beings. It's really the horizons that we actually are paranoid about.
Right.
And both of these are just a classical problem. So every time I hit in a conflict like this, I just try to put it in the framework. Like, okay, we are disagreeing on the horizon.
Yeah.
I am paranoid about the long term and you're paranoid about the short term.
I like the way you say that.
Yeah, and the same thing with marathons and marathons of sprints. I mean, the idea of CI/CD in our tech world, continuous integration, continuous deployment is about sprint, 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 sprint.
Yeah. Oh
But then you also got to say, are these sprints going to stitch together to create a big picture of a really enduring feature, or are we just committing code for the sake of committing code? And I think I'm a big fan of working backwards. This concept that Amazon has really popularized, like, okay, you've got to think about the marathon and then work backwards to the sprints.
Yeah.
And I think I remind myself every day about this, that folks, we're committing a lot of code.
Yeah.
But to what end? That's where the end user comes in. That's where the experience thinking comes in. That's where the marathon comes in.
Amazing. You're being very realistic, very careful about how you put it. I'm sure you made a great CEO, and you still are a great CEO. So on that note, I'm fascinated by resume. I want to ask about some things you're doing outside of the tech world. I was very fascinated by Paramahamsa Ventures, the name. Why did you pick that name? And I know Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, was he the inspiration? But what you do there is also equally fascinating. You're into biotech. So tell us a little bit about your non-profit venture, Paramahamsa Foundation. And,
Yeah, no, I mean, it's been a big part of my evolution the last couple of years. I turned 45 in 2020, and I'm like, okay, I have to think of the next 15 years, and hopefully if I do well in the next 15 years, then, and if I live long enough, then I can think of the next 15 years after that. But a big part of my sort of, looking above the water, that's too, deep into B2B and building a company, and there's an element of self-actualization that came about in 2020 with COVID. And I figured, I still have to go and build a company and think about the lessons learned from the last company to build into this one. How do I also age more gracefully? And how do I learn things that I probably never be able to go do a company on because I'm too much of a dabbler in biology and of course I know computing, but I don't know enough biology. So is there a way to create this bridge between biology and computing? And that's where my CIO, was a really good friend of mine from high school. We spun off a family office, and he was a big fan of Krishna Paramahansa and Yoganand as well. So I think he came up with this name, and I really said, look, I think I'm getting into yoga anyway, but I think it was the name that I thought was going to be timeless as well. But then we have a family office, and we have philanthropies, and the philanthropies really focuses on long horizons, like 10, 15, 20 years. So we've focused a lot on computational oncology, and trying to build bridges between clinical data, so doctors, clinicians. You have statisticians who are actually thinking about no more than 5 to 10 parameters in terms of how do you really build stochastic and statistical models.
Right.
Versus AI folks who are thinking of 5,000 and many more parameters, into this. So
again, there's a paradox.
and you need to bring them together.
Yeah.
I mean, so our idea, my wife and I, we said, let's go focus on Dell Medical School and UT Austin Computer Science and Machine Learning Lab, and bring them all together.
What blew my mind was they're trying to store data in a DNA in a cell. George Church from MIT. You're talking about storage, networking, storage in the cloud. They're talking about storage of unimaginable amount of information in biology, in cells, in organisms. So organisms become storage units. So at one point we're going to be living in breathing technology instead of using hard drives.
Well, nature has evolved over hundreds of millions of years. Actually, I would say 4.5 billion years. And there's a lot to learn. Honestly, it is probably one of the most anti-fragile systems ever built.
Yes, I love the word anti-fragile.
Yeah, and there's a lot to learn, from nature. So I think that biology and computing and the fact that they're at the cusp of each other, learn from each other, they'll embrace and assist each other,
Yeah.
was to us the best way to age gracefully, learn, being a fly on the wall next to the researchers. And the more AI I learn from that field, the more I can bring to the world of a mundane world of CRM and business process
Yes.
and all that. I thought it was the best of both worlds for us. So I think Paramahansa Philanthropies, learning from UT Austin now in Institute of Science,
Oh, wow.
Stanford, we've just tried to be a fly on the wall in many of these.
So you brought them all together?
Well, in their own little campuses. But my thing is, if you can really, at UT Austin, the big focus is converge, the Dell Medical School folks with the computer science folks, the machine learning lab folks, bring them all together, the Odin Institute folks together. Because, to me, I think the thing that defines my sort of thinking is convergence, that things are actually more similar than they're apart.
Yeah.
And I bring that to the way I think about our business, DevRev. That's the way I think about philanthropy. That's the way I think about. We thought about cloud computing in the past as well. That look, there's a lot that we can converge as opposed to diverge.
Amazing. Yeah, I just can't forget the keynote you gave at the IIT Bay Area Leadership Conference. You talked about 3 concrete stories. One was about Jennifer Doudna, and to me it was most empowering. A woman and a scientist, somebody who changed the landscape of biology and computing. And in that, your favorite quote was to build the edge. To look, you are the one who creates the edge. You talk about a climber who did a solo, and then looks like that's what drives you, whether it's biology or computing or as a person.
Yeah, it's pushing the edge is important. Honestly, when we were trying to build Nutanix, everybody said, "Why would you? Nobody wants it." I think that was the early sort
Is
of.
that right?
Yeah, and by the way,
Oh my
that was
God.
true for even Amazon Prime. I've heard Jeff talk about this, that for the longest time, most people within Amazon would say it's going to bring the whole company down. Why would you do Amazon Prime?
So why do you keep pushing then? How do you know you have to keep pushing? Like,
I think there is again this short term versus long term thinking. That there's a lot of people who are paranoid about the short term. Very few people are paranoid about the long term.
right.
And they also know that in the long term,
Yeah.
if you fight for the long term,
Yeah.
some real breakthroughs will happen. And
Yeah.
we did a little bit of a dent in this universe with Nutanix, but
Right.
I feel like a very controversial thing that we bring up as developers and customers. A lot of people are like, why would you want to have your
I know.
developers be
I-
closer to your business and customers?
I know.
I'm like, in the world of GPT now,
Yeah.
if machines will generate a lot of code,
Yeah.
what do developers do then? They have to get more curious about the business, about growth engineering, about customer engineering, about customer success, about product management. All these things become a realm of the developer now, as
Yeah.
opposed to just sitting in the cubes and writing code.
Yeah. On that note, on that amazing note, I want to ask, what's next for Dheeraj Pandey? What is the edge he's trying to create, and show the world that he's pushing it, but he's actually creating it. What's next for you?
Well, I think a big chunk of this is between our philanthropies and DevRev. I think we want to show the world that multiple departments working in an organization have more in common than they have not in common. The idea of one CRM, will play to this. We feel like there's too many silos in sales CRM and support CRM and marketing CRM and a product CRM. It's all one CRM. And if you can go and build the world's best co-pilots and the world's best analytics engine, to bring people together in a company and have them be more customer centric, that'll keep me consumed for this coming decade. And along the way, I think if we can help be fly on the wall with computational oncology by just learning with researchers, and I can bring a lot of those AI ideas to business, I think that'll be a handful. And teach our kids. We have 3 children. My wife and I have 3 children.
Amazing. I don't know how you do it. I don't know.
And
You must be superhumans. You and your
I
wife.
think it's my wife actually who's been a big part of this journey. Without her, we wouldn't have been able to raise our kids. And if they can not just embrace AI, but embrace humanism along the way and respect what it means to be a human, I think we've done justice to ourselves.
Awesome. On that note, thanks a lot, Dheeraj, for this amazing hour. You lit a lot of candles here. I mean, I can't stop mulling about the things you said. I still feel our conversation is unfinished. I want to pick up on many things you said, maybe another time, but thank you so much for this amazing.
Thank you for the opportunity, and it was a